Every year, on the 7th of April, Rwandans and Friends of Rwanda gather to commemorate and honor the memory of the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, which brought Rwanda to its knees and left the country bleeding, deeply wounded and scarred. And though the country has risen from the ashes and reclaimed its place at the global stage, its history, though forgiven, can never be forgotten. Before the arrival of European colonialists, Rwanda was a powerful kingdom led by monarchs. The pre-colonial era in Rwanda was a formative period in the country's history, marked by the establishment of kingdoms, cultural development, and the emergence of social structures that would shape the Rwandan society for centuries to come. For close to 1,000 years, Rwanda was governed by kings.
Nyanza used to be the royal capital of Rwanda from the end of 19th century up to 1961. So this place, this hill, which is called Rukari, the second last king of Rwanda used to live here. He was staying on this hill. There is modern pass. Maybe you get opportunity to visit the place. Is where the second last king of Rwanda, Mutara III Rudahigwa, used to stay in that palace. That is why the government of Rwanda decided, to keep this place. Unfortunately, when the king died in 1959, then after Kaibandi's regime, abandoned this place, was no any significance, during the First and the Second Republic. It's just after 1994 genocide against Tutsi, aftermath of that period, the government of Rwanda decided, to transform this place into a museum.
So kings were considered as gods of Rwanda. First of all, they were that much adored and loved by their people, but they were seen as like God on earth, or God among us, the Rwandans, basically. So they'd go to the kings for different things, different cases that were a little bit hard in different places. They'd go for kings for counsel. So kings were that powerful, kings were that loved among us Rwandans.
This was a life before the colonial era. Rwandans lived in unity and shared the same language, culture, traditions, and religion. The kings were neither for the Tutsis, Hutus, nor the Twas. They governed and served all equally. But seeds of division were sowed, resulting in discrimination and culminating in the beginning of a systematic elimination of the Tutsis in the 1950s.
Yeah, actually, I think very often when people speak of the genocide against the Tutsis, they tend to focus exclusively on 1994, but 1994 was the culmination of decades of sporadic, actually not just sporadic, even systemic oppression against the Tutsis, because if you go back to the 1959, 60, 61, 62, 63, when there was this, what they called the social revolution, when the monarchy was overthrown, a large number of Tutsis left the country, and from that time on, they were refused peaceful return to the country. And if you really want to understand the genocide, you need to go back to that period, because from the period 1962, when we got independence, for me, I lived in Rwanda, I grew up in Rwanda, we had sporadic massacres against the Tutsis. that period between 1959 to 1994 was a period that really reminded you that you live in a country, though you are Rwandese, but you are not really accepted as fully Rwandese.
Though Rwandan, the Tutsis were not accepted in their own country. Before its full execution, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi was well orchestrated. Propaganda was spread through the media while the militia was organized and armed throughout the country.
There was this propaganda, the anti-Tutsi propaganda that started, and there was the organization of the militia in different parts of the countries, and there was the arming of the militia and the population. And then 1994, when the plane of the president was shot, then that sparked off the killings. But you can't say it was an explosion of violence, spontaneous explosion, because things had been planned and prepared, lists had been made, and people had been identified. And we saw it coming. We couldn't just leave the country, but we saw it coming.
Words will never be enough to describe the horrific atrocities committed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Neighbor turned against neighbor, husband turned against wife, and vice versa. The militia's target was to kill 10,000 Tutsis per day. Total extermination of the Tutsis was the ultimate goal. Tears fall freely as the survivors recount the painful experiences that they lived through.
Papa yagerageje kubashyira mu miryango ngo babahishe ariko
Dad tried to put my siblings in families to try and hide them, but that did not work. So they brought them to the church where there was a plan to kill them. While in the church, they tried to defend themselves against the killers. But on the 16th of April, Padre Seromba gave the green light to destroy the church so as to ensure that all Tutsis who had taken refuge in the church were killed. The church was destroyed and we lost our loved ones.
Nababwiye ko nari ndi kumwe na mama na bakuru banjye.
I was together with my mom and older siblings.
Nari ndi kumwe na mama mufashe akaboko.
I was holding my mom's hand when they threw the first grenade, which ripped her off my hand and killed her.
Yamunkuye mu kaboko. Naka kaboko k'iburyo sinahise menya ahantu ajya ko grenade yaramutwaye nanjye mpita nikubita hasi.
I fell to the ground and felt hot stuff falling on me.
Muri ako kanya ibintu bishyushye binguyeho.
While the merciless killings continued in Rwanda, the international community, though aware, turned a blind eye.
Some were really aware that something bad was in the making, or the UN and other organs had been warned that something big is in the making. But because of the political interest and others, probably that wasn't really listened to until things exploded, and then they noticed that the truth had been told, but not really taken seriously.
Many of the countries represented here today also sent their sons and daughters to serve as peacekeepers in Rwanda. Those soldiers did not fail Rwanda. It was the international community which failed all of us, whether from contempt, or cowardice.
And so, with no help in sight, Rwanda had to look inward for a solution to stop the genocide against the Tutsi. The Campaign Against Genocide Museum best captures and documents how the genocide was stopped.
The order by the chairman RP High Command Major General Paul Kagame, which was clear: stop genocide, defeat genocidia forces, and rescue victims of genocide in time. And when he aired out this order to his forces, he immediately tasked the 600 soldiers who were based here, as I said, who were here to accompany the politicians who were in the preparations for the installation of the broad-based transition government and the National Transition Assembly according to the Arusha peace talks. So when the order was given to the forces, he immediately tasked the 600 soldiers to break out from their initial positions, defend themselves, and rescue victims of genocide in their vicinity while containing and engaging the genocidia forces who were rushing to this building. And then the next room, as you walk through the next phase of this museum, you look at the order by the chairman RP High Command Major General Paul Kagame, an order that was aired out on 7th of April 1994 at Murindi headquarters, which was the chairman of High Command headquarters in time. And after giving this order on 8th, he also ordered his forces to advance through different axes of advance. And when one talks about the order, as I said, it's clear: stop genocide, defeat genocidia forces, and rescue victims of genocide. But this order also had a strategic end state. It had its main objective to achieve as you execute this order. And this main objective was to see a situation whereby genocide is stopped, genocidal government overthrown, and peace restored throughout the country.
Through blood, sacrifice, and a relentless spirit, this objective was achieved in July 1994. When the guns fell silent, the crude weapons laid down, and the killing stopped, the extent of the devastation of the genocide and the magnitude of the loss was immense. More than 1 million people lost their lives. Many people lost loved ones. Entire families were wiped out. The Kigali Genocide Memorial is a final resting place for more than 250,000 victims of the genocide against the Tutsi.
This memorial was established firstly to serve as a place of remembrance for the genocide victims, our loved ones, who didn't get a proper human dignity during the genocide. When they were killed, they were not properly buried. So this memorial is here first of all to serve as a final resting place for our loved ones who were massacred during 1994 genocide against Tutsi. But from this history of the genocide and from having it as a place of remembrance, it became also a place of education. The first exhibition, which is the largest, talks about or explains about the history of genocide against Tutsi here in Rwanda. Not only the history of the genocide, but it takes everyone who enters the museum through the whole background of how genocide was planned, its execution, how it was stopped, and then the aftermath of the genocide, how the country recovered, and also today where we are and what to wish for the future, which is to sustain peace. How can we sustain this peace that we have achieved? We have also the section that talks about other genocide in other parts of the world, and there is a room created in memory of the innocent children who are the victims of the genocide against Tutsi here in Rwanda. This was a room that was created to honor those innocent children, but also to show the intent of genocidals who intended to wipe out completely the future generations of Tutsi in this country, because they wanted to exterminate all the Tutsi completely.
More to the loss of lives, the country's systems, infrastructure, and economy were all destroyed. In order to rebuild itself, Rwanda had to deal with social, economic, and judicial challenges.
After 1994, we had a serious humanitarian crisis, so many refugees, displaced people, survivors who had lost their beloved ones, many who had committed genocide. Those were humongous social issues that had to be dealt with. So restating people in places where they can live, for those who are coming out of other countries to Rwanda, but also those who had gone out of the country in 1994, and ensuring that harmony of people was, I think, for me, the biggest challenge. Then the justice issues and unity, reconciliation has been quite a journey for us and still is, but I think quite good progress. The idea of fostering reconciliation among Rwandans. So on the social front, those were real issues.
The quick action was actually to put in place the government of national unity to promote social cohesion, to deal with by then pressing issues around many survivors, orphans, but also many refugees that went in our neighboring countries, security issues. Actually, the period from 1994 to 2000 has been what I can call a recovery period, where government of Rwanda has been focusing on national unity, social cohesion, dealing with security issues, but also trying to make sure that government and institutions are operating. So that phase one was really dealing with emerging issues by that time, but also recovery.
The biggest drive of this growth is good governance. Governance that knows what they want, government that commits to achieve what they want, government that commits to accountability and proper planning. So the fact that from 2000 or 2001, we had a clear path of where we wanted to go in terms of the Vision 2020. The first 6 months were really a recovery period. We were just coming out to the deep pit, the genocide government had put our country into. Now by 2000, we were sort of on the ground, on the surface. So we had to build on that to go up. So the vision of what we wanted to achieve, and that is linked to building institutions that will help the country to achieve that. Again, during that period of recovery, these institutions were set up. For once, this government set up an Auditor General's office that was to ensure accountability of government finances, set up the tender board that was to ensure public tenders are done transparently and with ensuring value for money. We had the Revenue Authority being established to ensure maximizing government revenues in a professional way. We had the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament for accountability. So we had a lot of institutions being set up to drive this long-term vision of accountability and proper planning.
30 years later, the country that was once broken and destroyed can hardly be recognized. The transformation has been described by some as too good to be true. But what exactly did it take to get here?
The deliberate openness of the country to other people to come in the country and invest in the country. Rwanda has been very deliberate at that, to attract foreign direct investment into the country with the LDB's initiatives and efforts. That is very important, but also the ease of doing business, not only for foreigners but also for Rwandans, I would say would also be a key factor, because the private sector is definitely the main engine of development and growth, and actually also the main source of employment. But you could also deliberate investments by the government to kickstart various sectors. So openness and deliberate government investment and ease of doing business, to me, would be the main three drivers. But overall, obviously, security and peace. Nothing can progress well without stability. And I think for me, that's the foundation in terms of our journey.
Actually, as we talk now, our economy is knowledge-based, and it is led by the private sector, and this is seen through the level of investment. We are making as a country, be it local investment, but also foreign direct investment. We are being able actually to attract even foreign investors in terms of FDRs.
And with this clear vision, with the seriousness to accountability, with the implementation, seriousness to implementation, donors became were satisfied with what we were doing, and we had more money coming from our development partners. So that supported the financing of the economy.
Rwanda's visionary leadership and clear strategic plans yielded tremendous results.
Our GDP has moved from a level of $753 million in 1994 to a current level of about $14 billion in 2023. Those are the recent numbers. So that equates to about 19 times, multiplication of 19 times of GDP over the last 30 years, which is tremendous, which is big growth. And that level of GDP growth has been sustained by an annual growth of about 9%. That's, you could say, one of the highest growth rates in sub-Saharan Africa.
It has been a long and winding road towards rebuilding the country. With its fragile and dark history, Rwanda knows the importance of fighting the genocide ideology and teaching the correct history to the young generation to ensure that the mistakes of the past will never be repeated.
I think it's very important to understand that the genocide was educated in schools and everywhere. So that's easier to happen again if we don't educate the young people about where that took us as a country, about the consequences of the genocide, about why today as a country we are still saying that we are a developing country when other countries are way ahead of us. So I would say that it's important to understand that, because if you broke a glass today, for you to understand the costs of buying a new one or fixing the one that is broken, so you need to also teach the person who wasn't there when you broke it. Why is it so important to protect it? Because it's costly and it's so hard to fix it again. So that's the mindset people should have, understanding how heavy it was for people who stopped the genocide, who sacrificed their lives, and we need to teach that to the younger generation. Like that we can prevent the genocide to ever happen again. And you can only prevent something because you know where you're coming from. If you don't know your past, how are you going to navigate and understand and know your future?
The reconciliation part. How do we reconcile with the history? How do we reconcile with this? How do we explain this to the young generation? They understand the terrible journey that their parents have gone through, giving, forgiveness. So young people, we try to tell them the choices this country has taken, the forgiveness that has been given by the survivors of genocide against the Tutsi, and also to tell the young people that they have to embrace this philosophy, this ideology of forgiveness, because the survivors were the only who could help us rebuild this country. they had what to give the forgiveness, which the perpetrators didn't deserve. Sometimes the perpetrators didn't even ask for forgiveness, but the survivors opted to give the forgiveness to the perpetrators. And this is the core teaching that we give to the young people, that this is a very, it's a choice that the country has taken to forgive, but not to forget, to learn from that history, to never repeat that again.
What does it mean to be Rwandan today?
I've seen all the bad sides of living in a divided nation, and I've seen the good side of building a united visionary nation. So I feel proud of what we have achieved.
First of all, I'm proud to be a Rwandan, and looking at where the country has come from, and today I think me and the rest of Rwandans should be proud of this country.
I'm a proud citizen to be part of this resilient nation.
What does it mean for me to be a Rwandan today? I don't know if I can explain, but I am super proud for who I am and where I was born. Regardless the problems of genocide against Tutsi in 1994.
Being a Rwandan today is pride.